Master.
Hello everyone and welcome to our showcase of the best current deck in the game. Here I will teach you how to both build and use the deck, at least until it gets nerfed, so you too can dominate the leaderboard like I did. So without further ado, let's get into it. This deck ranks high on the skill requirement, however not as high as my plundering deck I made a tutorial on previously. One of the reasons why this deck is incredibly powerful is thanks to the Awuga Orders system of discarding cards, which allows for a very powerful but random effects. One example of this could be discarding Cooking the Books or Field Bureaucrat, which then will allow you to use a contract like Breach of Terms or Parchment Barrage on turn 1. Using Breach of Terms on turn 1 might allow you to protect your Covert Contractor on turn 2, so you may put him behind a taunt like Stalwart Guard, or put down Basmith the Reformed Devil, so that the opponent has to choose between the two and you draw cards no matter which one they choose to remove. However, if the Covert Contractor gets removed, do not worry as this deck does not rely on him. He is one of our primary damaging creatures, however, this deck relies mainly on Stellar Shard, Spellbreakers, and Bone Brutes if you draw accordingly. The discarding mechanic is also very useful at removing cards we know we will not be able to use for quite some time, while at the same time switching them for a card that might be much more useful for our current predicaments. This significantly reduces the RMG aspect of card draw, as it allows you to actively pick and choose which cards stay and which cards go. This is also one of the reasons why this deck is a high skill requirement deck, as you have to know your opponent's deck as well as your own. Knowing the strengths and weaknesses of every faction in the game will allow you to choose better which cards to keep and which cards to discard. Knowing your opponent's deck is also incredibly important, as Spellbreaker is a critical component of your deck, and if used at the right time, it might waste your opponent's entire turn. In this clip I'm fighting against a Wild Horde player, and we just reached 5 mana. He has very few cards in his hand, making me believe that the few cards in his hand are draw cards, and the strongest draw cards he could have as a Wild Horde would be the Sudden Onslaught and a Dragged Skull. As both are spells, any plans relating those two cards are officially halted. So my opponent immediately flipped his Hourglass, giving me a massive advantage as he wasted an entire turn. Later we find out that the card that I actually prevented from being played was Dragged Skull. Considering that I am at 12 HP and my opponent is flying minion oriented, there is a high likelihood that I might have lost on my opponent's turn 6, if not for the Spellbreaker at turn 5. Here is the deck list, feel free to pause the video and copy my deck. The last card is the Rage Wrath, you are welcome to remove it if you think it does not fit. Now that you have the deck, I will play some games and give commentary on them, as well as explain the strengths and weaknesses of my deck. This deck was originally created because the recent patch has nerfed a lot of minions and buffed a lot of powerful spells. This resulted in a meta where people ran a very powerful mastery Spellslinger decks or a Cosmic Reanimation, where after casting a lot of low mana cost spells, they will fill up the board with a lot of Bone Brutes. My opponent just used 7 spells in a quick succession, which makes me very worried about a Cosmic Reanimation next turn. But this is exactly what my deck was made to deal with, so I simply put down a Spellbreaker and make the Cosmic Reanimation cost 11 mana, making it unplayable. Since my opponent's deck is based entirely around that one particular card, after taking it out of the equation, my opponent realized there was no chance to win and gave up. Since this is my ranked deck, I've decided to only use ranked games as examples for this video. This time we are facing a Spellslinger who got very lucky with his draw, taking us down all the way to 17 HP by the turn 2 with 3 Dark Mareblas and attacks with his Dungeon Master. Luckily we had minions to block the Goblin Rushes, which forced him into using a Flying Dragons. which was absolutely no issue for us as we have a lot of removal in our deck. Clearing the board is absolutely essential so we can deal 6 damage with our Stellar Shard, because if we do not end the game quickly, the opponent will kill us first. Although tempting, Spellbreaker here would have been a big misplay, as Spring Trapping a Crusader will remove the board, allowing me to do 6 damage, as well as I am aware that this opponent has a secondary faction for Wild Horde, meaning there is very high likelihood of flying amped creatures. Very close match, proving just how powerful Spell Slingers are right now, as we are supposed to counter this kind of deck. Next game will be showing a match against an opponent using a deck that is relatively strong against ours. I would like to point out that a minion heavy plundering guild is also strong against our deck, but I have already showcased 4 matches and I don't think putting another one will be good for this video. We have a lot of ways of dealing 1 damage, so Desperados are not too big of an issue. However, losing my Stellar Shard here to an unlawful trespass hurts a lot, especially since I could have used it to block his 6/6. Archivist is not an issue, so we ignore it. I've decided that
my face is my shield!
As I want to protect my Garen with the town, Blessed Guardian to counter my Garen's HP gain, and as stated before, Zealous Archivist can be ignored for now thanks to the Spellbreakers preventing him from gaining any extra cards. Our opponent is setting up a relatively strong board, and again, this turns out to be our 4th serious misplay this game, as using Forced Acquisition on a sleeping minion prevents us from blocking in the future. Luckily, our opponent also misplayed by blocking my Covered Contractor with his Orcus Explorer, which prevented him from having a lethal next turn. I did not expect damage removal from a minion heavy deck, which is a mistake, as knowing that his secondary faction is a Uga Order, Reparation is naturally going to be in his deck. Not to worry, everything is going according to plan. I am a professional and everything is absolutely calculated. To prevent lethal with spells, I have put up a breach and removed Blessed Guardian so that we can get healed by Garen. Our opponent is running out of cards, but he managed to put down a lot of minions. Thanks to the Garen and Parchment, we have a lot of cards, which also includes a lot of removal, allowing us to get rid of the Blessed Guardian yet again. And we solidify our safety from the spell damage with a Spellbreaker. Spring Trap on a 6 mana minion is big, although I could have kept it to use it on my Spellbreaker in case I could not finish the game next turn. Although I was confident that with the removal in my hand, I could end the game right there and then. A very good game that had me walking away from the table as if I was just hit by a bus.